Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see so many people here this afternoon. My name is Barbara Liu. I'm the chair of the English department here at Eastern, and I welcome you to this special English at Work alumni panel about library and information science. Just to give you a sense of what will be happening over the next hour, for the first 45 minutes, we'll have a moderated question and answer session, and I'll be introducing you to our moderator in a moment. And then for the last 15 minutes, we'll open up the floor to questions from you. So be paying attention, thinking if there's something that didn't get asked, that you didn't hear about, that you're interested in, be prepared for that question in the last 15 minutes of our time. So to begin then, I will introduce our moderator, and he will in turn introduce our panelists and begin the Q&A. Our moderator is Kyle Randall. He's a senior English major here at Eastern. He's also a communications minor, and he'll be graduating in May. I was going to say next month, but not quite. We're not quite in April yet. So, and don't rush you, okay. He'll be graduating in May, and he is actively exploring different career options for post-graduation. So, Kyle, I'll turn it over to you.
How's everyone going? All right, I've never done anything like this before, so we'll see how this turns out. First panelist is Eric Allen. Eric graduated from Eastern in 2012 and then earned his library master's of Library and Information Science degree from San Jose State University in 2014. While there, he was a night circulation technician and librarian trainee at the United States Coast Guard Academy in New London. After receiving his MLIS, he worked at the Northern New York Library Network as a regional services librarian. Since 2016, Eric has been the high school librarian at Franklin Academy, Malone High School in Malone, New York. He works with over 400 students a day, dealing with reference questions, reader's advisory, assisting with homework, and helping students find more information on careers in college. He also does additional technology-related duties that you might not expect from a librarian's normal responsibilities. Next up is Caroline Hayden. She graduated from Eastern in 2013 and attended the University of Maryland's iSchool program, where she graduated in 2016 with her MLIS in Archives Management and Digital Curation. She's worked at the University of Maryland performing digital preservation and has spent time working at the NPR, University of Baltimore, and the Chevy Chase Historical Society in Chevy Chase, Maryland. Currently, she is the Digital Services Manager at the Historical Society of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. She manages HSP's Digital Curation Department, providing online access to historical collections and data, and collaborating with fellow institutions to increase digital access to Pennsylvania area history. And finally, we have Hillary Saxton. She graduated from Eastern in 2012, then went on to the School of Library and Information Science at Simmons College, where she received her MLIS in 2014. During graduate school, she worked in the Wheelock College Library, as well as in a special collections library for the nonprofit organization Facing History and Ourselves. After receiving her degree, she became a young adult librarian with the Brooklyn Public Library, where she worked at both the Coney Island and Malcolm Bedford Stuyvesant branches. Since 2016, she has been working as a children's librarian at the main branch of the Cambridge Public Library in Cambridge, Massachusetts. In addition to running and planning programming, she's responsible for reviewing and buying part of their collection, as well as outreach with public schools and readers advisory to patrons of all ages. Let's welcome them all. And for our first question, can you explain your responsibilities during a typical day at your job?
Typical day. Well, I will be the first to say it. At a high school, there is no such thing as a typical day. Basically, teachers are kind of weird because we work like 60 hours a week during the year and we get summer off. So basically, I go into work around 6 o'clock. plan everything depending on what I'm teaching that day. Sometimes I go and teach. We just got an $80,000 makerspace, so I'm planning stuff, building things with our 3D printers, setting up the laser engraver. I'm also as you mentioned, I do technology, so I'm the Google administrator for my entire school district. And I also am part of the IT staff, they don't pay me, but I'm part of the IT staff. And so I'm dealing with people who have Chromebook issues because we have one-to-one Chromebooks and a whole bunch of other things. I get about 370 to 420 kids per day through the library. So helping them find books, working on college applications, FAFSA forms, homework that they're desperate and was due last week, that sort of thing. It's a lot of stuff. I don't do a lot of book stuff. Like you think, librarian, you do so much book stuff. I never do book stuff. I do book stuff on occasion, like I'll help people find stuff to read. I do a lot of reading myself, and I order the books, but I have a library aide. She handles all the circulation, all the ILL, and I do everything else. But it's a lot of fun. And I finish the day between 2:30 and 5, depending on how lucky I am.
I don't do book stuff either. Because I'm the department manager at the Historical Society, I go in and my main responsibilities are taking care of the department's budget, working with our chief information officer to either get new equipment for my digitization specialist, or I work with our development department to get grant funding for digitization projects. Like right now, I'm working with a consortium in Pennsylvania to digitize some of our collections relating to women's rights activists. And we're going to put that on a website called In Her Own Right, and it's going to be to commemorate the anniversary of the 19th Amendment. So I take care of applying for funding for things like that, writing standards and policies for our department's workflow. How do we preserve our digital files? When donors, they'll give us Word documents and their collections now, not just handwritten letters. So we have to figure out how to preserve those for the next century or so. So my job is to create standards and policies for the organization to manage those materials. So while it varies day to day, what I do, it's mostly higher level policy planning. It's not often that I get to do the scanning and the digitization part of it anymore, but I do get to supervise my staff who does it.
I work with books a lot. That's probably mostly what I do. I think the most of what I do every day is programming. So I'll have a story time in the morning and a sing-along in the afternoon, and that's no joke. That's what I do for work, because I just read stories and sing. And when I'm not doing that, I'm planning other programs. I started a social justice storytime program at the library. It's like a 8-month series. It's just about finishing, but that was a lot of work to plan, so that took a whole lot of my job. I get to buy children's books, which is amazing. I get to see them when they first come in. And a lot of working with teachers, working with parents, working with kids to help them find what they're looking for. But it's pretty chill. I get to play a lot, and it's awesome.
All right. What surprised you as you began working full-time in this career?
I'm going to give the typical answer and say how little I work with books. I mean, I read a lot of books and I help kids find a lot of books, but to be honest, the honest answer is how much technology is part of our job now. I love computers, which is great because when I walked in, computers is probably about 75% of my job. Either helping teachers with Google Classroom, helping people do presentations either on Google Slides or on Pixiv or on a whole bunch of other platforms that they use for education, for personal use. I help people build, I have an actual tech club that builds computers from scratch. I do a lot of computer and technology things. So I walked into the library profession saying, oh, my computer knowledge might be useful, and walked out of it saying, oh, my computer knowledge is pretty much my job. So it's a lot of librarianship is technology now.
I think for me, I'll comment more on the archives field in general. The The most surprising thing for me was the variety of archives that you can work in. It's not just universities, it's not just historical societies or museums. You could work for a law office, you could work for a corporation like Coca-Cola. You could even, depending on your specialized knowledge or interest, you could even work at a landscape architecture firm. And you might not be called the archivist, but you would be called a knowledge manager. And you do the same thing. You preserve their materials. So that was the most surprising thing to me, is we all go into the MLS program or even a bachelor's program for your library degree, and you can come out and go off into a million different directions.
I think Reader's Advisory, which is basically suggesting books to, patrons who are looking for different kind of things to read. They know what they want to read, but they know what they want in a book, but they don't know what it is. And so it shocked me that, there's so much stuff out there, and then there's new books coming out. We get like at least 20, 30 new books a day. And so trying to keep up with that so that I can give people the best advice is like a pretty big undertaking. Because, I'm trying to catch up with the classics that I still haven't read. Try to all the time, and to read the new stuff coming out, and then to have my own adult reading. So I think that's like the biggest part of the job. We're located just down the street from Harvard, and so people in the Graduate School of Education, they'll often get sent to my library because of our children's collection. And they'll have to do assignments that are like, make a bibliography about books with, diverse children, and books about kids learning about gender identity and things like that, where they need someone that really knows a wide variety of things to suggest. And it's taken me a long time to sort of feel like I have a background in it, sort of.
What do you find to be the most rewarding aspect of your job?
Honestly, helping a student do what they want. This year, I've written probably 50 letters of recommendation for kids, and I got one kid into the Naval Academy, which is huge. He went Navy, but, better than nothing. I was Coast Guard. We get to make fun of the Navy. So, I love seeing that light in a kid's eyes when you help them figure something out, or when they are able to, get something done that you helped them with, or even just finding a book that they really liked. And, I had one kid come into the library last week. He hasn't read a book in a decade, probably, since he was like in elementary school. And he wanted to come by, and he's like, I want to read a book. And asked him his interest, and he wanted to read about sports, and we went to the sports section, and he found a book. And he came back, a few days later, and he said, I love this book. And he checked out another book, which is unheard of. This kid hasn't checked out a book in a decade. And I got him to read 2 books. And stuff like that is just it's really great.
I think for me, the most rewarding aspect of my job is just seeing the final product of my work, which is the digital records online on our website that are accessible to the public. We have, and just the fact that all of that amazing history that used to just be in boxes in a physical location on a shelf in Center City, Philadelphia, where you had to go there to come visit it, it's now publicly accessible on our website, where anyone can go see it. Even if you're in Germany, you can still view it. That's the most rewarding thing for me, and it's one of the reasons why I came into this field, because there are just so many hidden gems in archives, and it's not always like the big cool things like copies of the Declaration of Independence, but sometimes it's a letter for one of the first psychologists who was a proponent for LGBT rights. And they were writing letters to their congressmen. That's a really, really significant piece of history that now everyone can access, because my department digitized the material and created metadata records to make it searchable online. So yeah, that's always pretty cool to think about that.
I think similar to Eric, mine is definitely about the kids. I never even thought I wanted to work with kids, but now that I do it, I can't imagine doing anything else. And it's not just seeing kids read or, an interest in reading. I love when kids love to read, but if they don't, that's fine. I like seeing kids learn to communicate with other kids and with their grown-ups and learn how to, express themselves. And anything like that really can come out just through, giving them a fun place to sing and to do whatever. And yeah, it's just been a really rewarding job to see how much families care and how much the kids like it.
What inspired you to pick this career path in general?
That's a tough one. I mean, I can give the cliche answer, but I will because it's true. I came to Eastern. I joined the English program to be a professor. I'll be dead honest. I wanted to do rhetoric. I wanted to do all the crazy higher learning things, get my doctorate degree, and teach at a university. And then I went to this library, and it all changed. Yeah, that's super corny, but it's also super true. I really didn't get to spend a lot of times in libraries as a youth. Nor when I was an adult in the beginning. So when I came here and I got to spend hours in a library, I kind of just fell in love with it. And I got to talking with the librarians, and I got to, interacting and learn their jobs, and I just kind of fell in love with it. I actually wasn't even going to be a high school librarian in the beginning. I was going to work in a college, and I was going to work in a public school or a public library, like at Cambridge or somewhere else. And then I was working as a regional librarian, started talking to school librarians, and found that I loved it. Just spent a day at a school library and went back to school to get my library cert for school, and just kind of went from there. So it was all serendipitous.
I guess my path is kind of like a funny story of how it seems like everyone knows what you're going to be when you grow up except you. So growing up, I was always a bookworm, and I was always in libraries, and people in high school would joke that I would end up being a librarian. And I kind of took a long route here. I started at Eastern as a psych major, then I became an art major. And then I finally settled on English in the secondary education concentration. And during this whole time, I was working upstairs in the archives. One, because I needed a job, but two, I thought it was libraries and history, and it was something that I was interested in. So I had been working there while going through school here. And my senior year of college here, I was student teaching, and I had a breakdown. I hated it so much. Sorry. I know.
No, I totally understand. I work with high
I love
schoolers.
working with kids. I don't. I love kids, but they're tough. It's tough. So I needed to reevaluate my career choices, and I realized the one place where I really, truly loved working was in the archives and in libraries. So I asked the archivist upstairs, how do you make a living doing this? How do you get paid doing this? And so they told me about grad school, library science, and so I started doing more research on that and found some schools to go to. And I decided that archives, and I wanted to work with archives because I really wanted to work with primary sources and historical materials. And I started going in with the digital preservation aspect because the more research I did in the library field and the career options, the stronger feeling I got that technology and preserving digital files was going to become extremely important. So I wanted to jump on that train before it became too competitive. Mm-hmm. So that's how I ended up with archives management and digital preservation.
When I was a senior here, I had no idea what I was going to do. I had no idea I was going to be a librarian. I had no idea I was going to apply to library school. I went here for English because I was like, with absolutely no idea of what I ever wanted to do with it. But I was like, this is something I love, and if I have to get a college degree, I'm going to have a good time doing it. So I went the English route, and I loved it. And honestly, it wasn't until a friend suggested that they were going to apply to library school that I was like, oh, that sounds pretty sweet. I'll do that. Sure, yeah, I'll do that. And then I got in, and I went to Simmons, and from there I was like, oh my, I can't believe I ever would have done anything else. This is exactly what I want to do.
This next one seems a little bit redundant now, but did you know the type of employment setting you wanted to work in when you began studying library science?
No, but the great thing about a library degree, and I think you guys will agree with me on this, is you can do practically anything with it. The library's information science degree, if you distill it to its base parts, is the ability to take information and organize it and distill it into a way that a layman can understand. And that can be used anywhere. I know, she mentioned Coca-Cola. I know someone who works for Boeing as a librarian. I know a librarian who works for Grumman Aerospace Engineering. I mean, there are so many great things you can do with this degree that yes, you can go and want to be your traditional cardigan, 100 cats with your glasses librarian.
There's nothing wrong with that, though.
No, I have 19. I have
If you want
19
to.
cats. I went full bore, but I mean, it's not your just typical librarian thing anymore. It's so important. Google employs 500 or 1,000, I forget, librarians.
I know, that's a
It's
lot.
a sheer amount because their job is to organize information. What do librarians do? Organize information. So we can do so much with our degrees that you don't have to have a distinct plan going in. It helps, but you don't have to.
Yeah, and I knew in the beginning that I wanted to work with archives, but when I moved to Maryland and I got a job at a public library there, and there was a time in the beginning where I thought, this is actually pretty great. I could keep doing this. You get your regulars, they come in, they know you know them, you build a rapport, and you build up communal and community relationships with people, and that is really rewarding. But, and after a while, it kind of it became stressful for me. And so I thought, okay, I do want to go back to archives. And so I did. But each setting within libraries, whether it's corporate or it's academic or it's, nonprofits, they all still have very similar elements that can be very attractive. So if you end up in one field and in one area and you find that you don't like it, it's but you like it for certain reasons, you can find those positives in another environment as well. You're not pigeonholed to one area of the library field, and a lot of people that I went to school with, they did go in expecting to be just the traditional archivist where I'm going to have a box of completely disorganized, chaotic pieces of paper, and I'm going to put them in nice little folders, and there's going to be a nice, pretty little finding aid so that researchers can come and look at it and know what they're looking for. And they ended up going into computer coding and doing IT stuff within archives and libraries. So it can. When you go into grad school and when you actually start working within these fields, you get exposed to more sides and facets of the career, and you might find that it changes for you.
Right, yeah, and like you said, the skills are somewhat translatable. So I thought I wanted to be a college librarian, and I did it for a little bit at a college in Boston, and I hated it. And I can see why a lot of people like it because it's very research-based, and that's what I wanted. That's what I was looking for with it. But I felt a bit taken advantage of by college students. So I decided, no, I'm going to become a public librarian. I'm going to work with the general public. I became a teen librarian in Brooklyn, and that was awesome. I wanted to kind of relate to people more and sort of act as a mentor if possible. And then eventually it led me to Cambridge and working with children, which I didn't know if I would last a month, but I ended up loving it for the same reasons I wanted to be a teen librarian. And there's still some of that research involved with it when I'm working with teachers and even with kids. but it's just a little bit different.
Did the grad programs you applied to have any requirements that we should be aware of, such as the GRE exam or specific undergraduate coursework?
Not really. I mean, the great thing about library science is you don't need an English degree or a specific bachelor to go into it. I know a guy who's a science librarian who was a mechanical engineer. I didn't have to take the GREs, but that might have been due to my age. I went to Eastern when I was 30, I graduated when I was 31, and I graduated library school at 33. So, I mean, I went very late. So a lot of that stuff for me was waived because it had been decades since I've been to high school. Did you guys have to take GREs?
I didn't have to. I took them. See, my at Maryland, you are required to have a GPA of 3.0 or higher, and at the time, the archives management program and the digital curation program had not been merged yet, and they were trying to prevent more students from entering the archives management program because it lacked the digital skills that students were going to need in the future. So they added some stricter regulation or requirements. That's not there anymore. I took the GRE because there was a moment when I thought my GPA was going to be a little too low, so I would have had to pass my GRE, and it ended up not being the case, but it was nice to have. It was nice to have the GRE and a passing score anyway. If you did well on your SATs, you're gonna do well on your GREs. It's not a super scary test or anything. So don't feel deterred to take it because, oh no, post-grad exams. It's fine. I think if you, at least from Maryland, if you want to do a double major of you want your master's in history and your master's in library science, there are some extra requirements. So just be aware of that, and that may be the case for other grad programs. So, I mean, I think that's honestly the biggest thing to always be aware of is if you want to do another degree with your MLS, make sure you're covering all of your bases for it. But yeah, and as far as undergrad coursework, not really. Most people are English majors or history majors when they go into it, but the archivist here was a biology major, and now she's the university archivist here. I think some people in my grad program, they were computer science. And the iSchool in Maryland, you have your traditional MLS program, but you also have your program for human-computer interaction, which is way more programming and software development focused. And then you also have the Master's of Information Management, which is more records management and IT related. So even within the iSchool at Maryland, there are still there's still a whole spectrum of what you can do in there. They all have different skill sets or knowledge bases that would help you get the degree, but they're not necessarily requirements.
Yeah, I didn't have to take the GRE or there were no special requirements. And that's one of the things that what you were talking about, how people come from so many different fields. That was one of the things I liked most about my grad program is that there were people who had worked in libraries for decades and then decided they wanted to get their MLIS. So you have a range of experience in libraries, but then you have people who have been working in other industries for decades too. Yeah. And then they bring that, and you have people from so many different bachelors and backgrounds. That was a really cool thing to have in the classroom. And then you have people who have never worked in libraries before at all, which is also fine. And it's a perfect mix. Yeah.
And there are some where it's not necessarily a requirement for the master's program, but it could be a requirement for your job. If you are interested in being a subject specialist, or for example, you want to be the math librarian or a science librarian, generally they will require that you have a bachelor's in that program, but sometimes they might also require a master's in that subject as well. So that's also another thing where you don't have to consider that for your library degree, but you are going to have to consider that for your career.
And I'm going to say, when you, high school librarians in particular, we are also certified teachers. I'm a certified kindergarten through 12th grade teacher. That has certain requirements as well, and it's dependent on state. In New York State, I had to get a master's in education, straight up another straight master's degree. I also had to pass the GRE, but they waived it for me because of my age, which is why I mentioned the age thing earlier. And then, in addition, a lot of the stuff you bring in, as you mentioned, other professions. I was in the military for 8 years, and during that time, I became a diesel mechanic, a master diesel mechanic. So I actually work with the BOCES vocational programs as their diesel specialist as a librarian. So, I mean, it's a lot of disparate things that come in, but if you ever want to work in a school, get your ed degree done when you do your MLIS, because I had to do it after, and that is not fun. Get it done while you're doing the MLIS, it's a lot easier. Because if you get certified in one state, it generally goes to all the other states.
Which course did you find the most challenging while you were completing your master's degree, and why?
That's tough.
Oh, I know.
Cataloging.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
I was going to say, all right, cataloging, library cataloging, all those things you have on the spine up there in LC format, that's all attached to what's called a MARC record. A MARC record has a bazillion different fields that each
Don't do
contain
this to
different
them.
things.
Don't do it.
Okay.
It's so.
I will say right now that cataloging, because of how it's done now, mostly by computers, is now optional. When I got my MLIS, it was an elective. I still took it because I'm insane. But it is an elective in a lot of ALA certified programs now. If you want to work in archives, if you want to work in a college, take it anyway. If you want to work in a public school or a high school or a corporate environment, it's generally not needed. But yeah, that was my hardest course.
It is helpful, though, to understand. You might not understand it at first, but it's helpful to understand. And there are a lot of people who love cataloging, who work in libraries to do that, and it's a lot of really cool skills, but it's just a little more complicated. So super props to people who want to catalog, but
Yeah.
I can't do it. I can't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and cataloging, knowledge of cataloging is helpful in archives. You don't have to necessarily know MARC, but rather than cataloging, we just do metadata creation. There are still standards, there are still rules, there are still gray, blurry lines that you can get into hours of arguments with people over. That was not the hardest class for me, though. I'm very detail-oriented. I happen to like metadata creation. For me, the hardest was appraisal and accessioning of archival materials. And it's not that it's difficult, like too many rules or things like that. It's what makes it challenging is because every answer to every question it depends. When it comes to appraising materials for archival value and preservation, there are certain things like legal mandates that, or even corporate mandates that will force you to take these materials and save them, like employee email records or, legislative bills. But a lot of archives do get personal collections from donors where you have to go through them and you have to determine their value, their worth. Is this something that's really worth saving? Or is this professor who did ethnographic research on an African tribe, does that fit within our collection scope or our scope of what we want to collect here? Is this considered of historical or research significance or relevance? Do we have the money for this? Do we have the space? Does anyone care? And it's different everywhere you go. When you take a class in appraisal and you go there, the professor isn't going to give you hard and fast rules that you can take with you and follow for the rest of your career. They're going to give you lots of articles on theories and lots of articles debating and arguing that so-and-so 30 years ago was wrong, and you should be focusing on these certain functions and behaviors of an organization and preserving those things. And it's always a back and forth gray area, and that's what makes it hard. Because you are, by choosing what collections to save in your archive, you are placing value on it. And you are telling the public in the future generations that this is something that was worth saving. This is something of historical value and significance. This is our history. And there are a lot of issues with that, just in the fact that some populations of the US are losing their voice and their identity because their history is not saved. And people going into the archives and library fields, they all come from different backgrounds. Sometimes in some areas, they all come from the same background. And so they all think that their history or what they think is important, and that's not always the case. So appraisal was the hardest for me, just because there's never going to be a good answer, and there's never going to be a good way to do it. And you honestly just have to have your reasons for why you think a collection is worth preserving, and you have to stick by those reasons and make sure that they're backed up.
I'm going to kind of bounce off her point. A lot of librarianship is like that. You're a curator of information. So anything, even in my collection as a high school, your collection as a public library, and your archives, everything that we keep, we have to justify as having merit. We have to justify spending money on it, spending shelf space. You know, if a teacher comes to me and says, why do we have this book? Why don't we have this book? I have to have a justifiable reason of why I chose one book over the other, or chose to collect this author and not collect this author, or focus on this thing for this month. So it's a lot of, you have a lot of responsibility, and in that responsibility comes the ability to justify your actions. And that's what a lot of librarianship is, because we are gateways or gatekeepers to a lot of knowledge in our communities. Like, for example, my area, I have the largest library in the North Country. There's not a lot of people in North Country. The county I live in is half the size of Connecticut and has 59,000 people. We're not talking a massive population here. So I have people from the public using my library as a public library because it's a library, it exists. We don't have another one. So I have to not only, balance my school's needs, but also the public's needs of other libraries, the ILL stuff for me, and it's a lot of responsibility to take under. And libraries are one-stop shops for a lot of things. You're a manager, you're a budget guy, you're, a collection curator, you're helping people with taxes. I mean, it's a lot of crazy stuff.
What kind of internships did you complete during your degree program?
I cheated. I just internshiped where I worked, because I worked at a library. As the trainee librarian, I basically just did my job, they paid me, and I signed my internship paperwork. I mean, so I kind of cheated.
In my program, we weren't allowed to do that. So, in the final year of my program, because I chose not to do the thesis route. You can do that. I chose not to. I chose to do a field study. So, for my final semester, I worked at the University of Baltimore in their special collections and archives, doing archival processing. After I graduated, I took paid internships. I was working part-time at the university, and I had continued working there as a contractor for a little bit until I got my internship at National Public Radio. I was there for a semester doing digital preservation and working with their audio files. And then after that, I got a part-time job. It wasn't an internship, but kind of felt like an internship. But so my internships were a university, special collections, and then a corporate library at NPR. Oh, and there was another one at a landscape architecture firm in Philadelphia. I was their cataloging and archival processing intern for a month.
I didn't have any internships. I just worked at libraries, a special collection, and a college library throughout school. But you had the option to take an elective course that would give you an internship, and definitely everyone in the archives field did an internship. But in the general library tract, you could if you needed to, but I had a job at the college library, and then later I had a job at a special collections for a nonprofit educational organization. So those were both great experience, so I didn't feel like I needed an extra internship. But the school gave you, I don't know if you guys had this, but the school would give you postings for jobs that were hiring students, library students. And so it wasn't necessarily an internship, but it was like an entry-level like reference desk job. And those were the perfect things to have while you were through going through school.
Yeah, we did have a database for internships for like field studies, and there's a blog for our school that does do job postings. I will say one thing: if you're doing internships, if it's not going to be for college credit, make sure it's paid.
Yeah.
Do not take an unpaid internship. Too many organizations and too many libraries or archives will just see you as free labor, where they just give you and they just expect you to do this work and gain this experience without getting paid, and we cannot afford to do that. So for the sake of our career and for the sake of our field, do not take unpaid internships.
I mean, you can if it's for college credit and it's through the college.
yeah.
Like, you're getting paid in college credits, but don't just do nothing for free. Oh, it'll be experience. You can get paid. Get paid.
You need to pay your bills. You need to eat. Don't expect people to just not pay you for your work. Always, yeah. That was something that I never settled for an unpaid internship, and I'm very, very grateful and happy that I had that line, because I never had to worry about paying my bills when I graduated when I got out of grad school.
And it's now you guys' turn to come up with some questions.
We got one.
Okay. I'm interested in what coursework is like in an MLIS degree. Like, do you write a lot of papers? Like, what does your coursework look like?
I mean, it depends on your track, but you have the core stuff. Your core stuff is going to be basic understanding of book collections, collection development. It's going to be information processing, data design and data processing. A lot of courses now require you to take some sort of computer work, either as web pages or presentation work. And then the rest is strictly designed on your program. For example, for me, I originally did reference and instruction, so mine was teaching classes and, search strategies and working with specific databases.
Yeah. My particular program, it was a lot more group work and less writing papers than you would think. There are the core classes that you do have to take where you might have to do a mock reference interview with someone, or you'll have to do some XML like records to show that you have some basic understanding of how XML schema works. But for my field within the archives, a lot of it was evaluating archive websites and evaluating them for how easy is it to find collection material, how easy is it to search for collection material, and others is writing a finding aid. Just take the computer files on your laptop and treat that as your personal collection and write a finding aid for it. How are you arranging it? How are you describing it? Things like that. Yeah, and then it's like, presentations on and like anything. It's so varied just because of the different tracks that you can take.
Yeah, we definitely a lot of group work. and then just different kinds of projects. As far as essays or writing papers, is nowhere near as much as you write as an English major
Yeah.
here or anywhere. I would say yeah, you're not doing that much writing.
A lot of article reading.
Yeah,
I mean, in archive, at least in archives, there's a lot of reading on theory, but yeah, not nearly as much writing.
We'll do some writing, but a lot of it's practical work, like write a report to your supervisor about XYZ, write a budget. Like one of the things I had to do for library management was justify my budget to a library board. And yeah, you got to write for some of that, but a lot of it's doing the presentation. So you're going to be doing some writing, nowhere near as much as you do here, but a lot of it's going to be practical, and you'll be able to take that and use it at your library job right
Yeah.
off the bat.
Exactly. Yeah, and you'll get to, I know if you do go like programming, like youth programming track, you learn how to do story times, and you do them in front of a group of graduate students, which is so much more horrifying than doing it in front of actual children. It's a lot scarier. It really depends on what you're focusing on, and you kind of like tailor your own experience there that way with the electives that you choose, and then your work will kind of depend on that. But if it's what you want to do and what you like, the work feels like nothing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you do like a lot of technical stuff. Now, when you were here at Eastern, did you take computer courses or did you wait until you were going for your master's?
I did a lot of my stuff before I even came here. I've been a computer nerd since the 80s. So, I mean, that was just what I did. I did take one course here, but I took a lot of courses in library school. I took web design, I took XML schema, I took a full metadata course, and then I also took a straight up database programming course. So, I mean, there are a lot of options, especially if you take what are called technical librarian track. Technical librarians are what we call basically IT people, and they take a lot of computer courses. And I know a librarian who actually double majored in a master's in computer science programming and a master's in MLIS. So a lot of that is chosen at the graduate level.
The only tech-related course that I took here was when I was in the secondary education program. We had a technology and education course, and so you just did HTML and web design. In grad school in the program, we did a little bit of database design in your core, a little bit of the XML. For me, because I focused on digital preservation, it wasn't so much that I didn't take any programming classes or anything like that, but I did. I did do a lot of work with digital preservation tools that would take your zip file and then just analyze the file, find what file format it is, develop a checksum string for it, and that was all that I took. I think I would recommend taking some kind of database design course, even if it's basic, just so you understand how searching works within a database and how good data is structured, because that's what your library catalog is. It's a database, and that is what the websites that you're searching for archival collections are. The digital libraries, they're databases. So having a knowledge of how good databases are designed and structured will be helpful. In my position, because I kind of skipped over the more intermediary digital archivist, digital librarian. I have to do command line computer coding in my career, so I don't have to work so much with that stuff. I just do higher level budgeting and grant proposal writing. So while I think it would help to know database design and maybe a little bit of command line interface, but but you don't have to be an IT person. You don't have to be in computer science. Honestly, the most helpful thing is to have a basic understanding of those concepts so that you can speak the same language as the IT department, because you are going to have to work with them, and you are going to have to make sure that they understand what you want them to do. And in order to do that, you have to be able to talk with them. But it's not, you don't need extensive computer science courses.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think the best thing you can do is understand how the databases work. That'll help you so much in the long run. I think it really depends. I think like Eric's job, you really,
I basically am IT,
you're
so
like
I'm
a
a
media
special case.
specialist, right?
Yeah.
So if that's the route you're going, you definitely want to have a pretty good understanding of current technologies and things like that. But that's definitely, I think it's maybe a little bit of a myth that libraries are like really just digital now or just turning digital. You don't have to just focus on technology. You want to be able to help people use the computers. You want to have like a knowledge of that, but it doesn't have to take up your full, learning experience. I didn't take any extra tech courses. I did take a web design class, but I didn't take any other extra tech courses. And there are definitely things now that I learn through my job. We have there's a lot of professional development to learn like Scratch, which is like, a program to teach kids coding, but it's not 100% necessary.
In the education world, PD is everything. I learned a lot of my stuff specifically for education and education technology from professional development that my job gives me. So you get the basics in library school and the basics here, and the rest will be specific to whatever job you decide to end up taking.
Yeah, I know. I find right now, just in my position, and just specifically where I am, being at my specific historical society, I do create simple databases for genealogical data, but we use a very user-friendly software for it. So I'm not doing too much in like SQL and whatnot. But yeah, and anyone who is interested in heavy, computer programming or IT stuff, you want to look at the systems librarian job positions and see what skills that they have. Those are the librarians who really need to know the computer science and the IT work, the systems librarians.
Technical and systems mixed up. I always do.
So I just have a couple questions about the actual program. So how long does it take to complete the program, or on average? About how many courses are in the program in general for the credits, and how many did you take per semester? And then also, for the semesters, are they the basic like spring, fall, or is it spring, summer, fall? So how did that work as well?
I assume each of us are going to be different. I'll be honest, I crammed everything. I got my bachelor's here in 2 years. I got my master's in 12 months, which means I took 42 credits in 12 months. Don't do this. I did it because I'm so old and I just wanted to get in the profession, but don't do this. Take 2 years on average to get a master's. You have to get it within 5. Most of them are 42 credits. Standard 3 credits per course, and my school at least did standard spring, summer, fall.
Yeah, and I know you said that you'd went to San Jose. I'm assuming that's the online program?
Yes, I did online because in Connecticut, there is no accredited ALA school anymore.
Yeah, please don't go to Southern. I'm
Southern
sorry.
lost their accreditation.
I
I'm
would
sorry.
love, I would love it if we had a program, but we don't have a program in Connecticut. Because Southern is no longer accredited, I think you can get reduced tuition for schools in like Rhode Island. Simmons is a private school, so I don't think they count in that reduced tuition. But University of Rhode Island would. There might be a public school in Mass where you can do that. My program, I did it full time, so it took 2 years. I think I had 3 classes a semester that I took. You can work and do full time, and it's tough, but it's not impossible. I know a lot of people were doing it other people in my program, they were doing it part-time while working full-time. So for them, it took 3 to 4 years to do it. Yeah, like Eric said, the amount of credits it's pretty standard throughout. So 42 credits. Maryland, so they do spring and fall semesters, but certain programs will let you start in the spring or in the fall for your program. Other schools will tell you, no, you have to wait until the fall. Maryland was that latter case. So when I had graduated here in 2013, I had moved to Maryland, but I had to wait until the fall of actually 2014 for me to start my program because I couldn't start in the spring of 2013. And as far as taking winter and summer courses, it really depends on if there are any available.
Or if they're any good.
Yeah, it's not like some of them will be like they might have a couple core courses that you need to take that are that the professor will be so kind to have in the winter, but most of them are electives. So.
And I did a 2-year full-time program at Simmons College in Boston. Same thing, I think 3 courses was full-time. So you would have, 3 days with 1 class a day, or the way I did it. So I was able to work a couple jobs, which is not always the case, but they were all in the same area, so it was convenient. But it was doable, and certainly I know people who are doing part-time and maybe taking 3 years, and I know people who are doing it even faster because there's like week-long intensive courses that you can take during spring break. Or during winter. So there are different options, but for me, just doing the 2 years full-time and working while there was okay, yeah.
Yeah, and certain schools, they'll offer online versions of a program, but they might not offer online versions of everything. Most will offer an online program for the general library degree, but there aren't that many just straight online archival programs. So some professors will do online courses within the program, but it is important to note whether a school that you're interested in, if it's really far away or if it's a difficult commute, you might want to make sure to see if they have your program as an online version or not, or hybrid.
Mine was hybrid. I had all online courses through San Jose because I lived in Connecticut, but I had to get all my tests done in person proctored. So they had to certify my proctor, and they had and my proctor had to check in, and I had to take my test with the proctor in the room. So I mean, it was all like that. So I mean, it was online, but I had to do all my final work with a person.
Thank you. So that was actually my second question about the online courses, because I was looking into programs that were possibly online. So if any of you had experience with that, and then also, how quickly do you need to choose your track? I know the general intro courses and things, but then once you actually choose your specific area, how long did it take you to do that, or how quickly do you have to do that in general?
Yeah, I don't think it's immediate.
First semester or end of the first semester?
I think it's probably around the end of the first semester, like Eric said. I didn't have to go through that, so I didn't really look into the process of it. I know when I was there when Maryland was merging their archival management and digital curation programs together, so there was a little bit of concern that some of my courses would no longer be applicable, or I would have to take other more redundant courses. But they were pretty easy. They were pretty easy with that. But yeah, I mean, when you apply for a program, it's not set in stone. You can change it. I think it's usually within the first semester.
Yeah, your advisor will help. I mean, I chose mine right off the bat. When it comes to online courses, a lot of people will poo-poo online degrees. I have not experienced that. My degree is online, but it is ALA accredited. And as long as your program is ALA accredited, you are good to go anywhere.
Yeah, and I think that the two, I would say if you're choosing archives or if you're choosing the school librarian track, you kind of want to know within that first semester.
Yeah.
But if you do the general track and you're thinking, I don't know if I want to work in a public library, I don't know if I want to work in a college library, or if I want to work for special collections, you can just do that general track and you can, sort of pick them as you go. I left with having taken classes about working in college libraries and public libraries with children, and then a lot of the time not working with children. So just having a little bit of all of that knowledge was fine and helped me get a job.
Yeah, and I know within my program, it's not there is overlap between courses. So in addition to your core courses, you have electives that you can take that can also apply to other concentrations. So while I did digital curation and archives management, there's also a government records management course. There's like an electronic records management course. There was like community outreach and diversity course concentrations that you can focus on, and there are multiple paths to reach those degrees. I focused mostly on digital preservation up until my second year of grad school, when I realized I need to still take some archival foundation courses, and it was never a problem. Also, if you're interested in doing something different that's not within the set path that your school provides, you can always also do an independent study kind of thing. I know like in bachelor's, undergrad programs, you can do independent studies. Grad programs are pretty similar with the library degree.
All right, well, unfortunately, our time is up. This has been really interesting. I'm glad you were all here. I hope you enjoyed it. I've been listening, and I've been fascinated, and I'm thinking if I had had this panel when I was an undergrad, I might be doing a different job today, because it just all sounds so fascinating. But first of all, let's thank our panelists for their time. And also thank you to Kyle for moderating.